If you're running a wrestling club and you're looking to supplement your existing fundraising efforts, please consider using CauseMatch. CauseMatch is a peer-to-peer online crowdfunding campaign, and past results show that this type of a campaign using CauseMatch will help you raise 6 times more than traditional events. And the best part is that it won't cost you an additional 30-40% in overhead. You don't have to change a thing in your current fundraising plans. CauseMatch is just meant to help supplement your existing efforts. Go to causematch.com/wrestling to schedule a 20-minute Zoom call and see if there's an opportunity to grow your fundraising. That's causematch.com/wrestling. All right, folks, we're here with John Heffernan. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Let's just start at the very beginning. You're a product of this St. Ed's program. You're the head coach of the program, one of the best high school teams in the country, maybe of all time. When did Howard Ferguson first come in your life?
Howard Ferguson became the coach at St. Ed's in '75, and that was my brother Brian's freshman year in high school. So when Howard Ferguson started the program, my brother Brian was in his first class as a freshman.
And was he coaching like a youth club in the area, or how did he come into that position?
Yeah, Howard Ferguson coached it was called the West Shore YMCA, and St. Ed's was coming off like an 0-11 season. And he went to the athletic director and said, I think I could, make a good run at this at the high school level. And at that time, we had no idea who Howard Ferguson was. My brother Brian basically went to St. Ed's to play football and wrestled too, but that wasn't the reason we went to St. Ed's.
And so were you wrestling in that West Shore YMCA program, or you guys weren't in
No,
that?
we wrestled in the CYO, which was a little different. We went to Catholic grade schools, and back at that time, there was probably 35 to 40 CYO teams in the area, so we had a pretty good little Catholic youth league.
How
So
many?
I wrestled my school, St. Richard's.
But there was like 35, 40. Was it elementary schools that had
Elementary school teams? Yeah. So 5th through 8th grade league. We had a big city tournament every year. It was a pretty big deal.
Wow. So you're coming up in a different club, and like you don't even know anything about this guy, and you said your brother went there to play football. Just for some context, can you give us a rundown on the brothers and where you fit in? Because we've had Jim on before, but for folks who maybe aren't familiar with the family tree.
There's 9 of us total. I'm the exact middle. There's 4 older, 4 younger. Brian's the oldest. I have 2 sisters, Laura and Beth. My brother Jim comes after that. I'm 2 years younger than Jim. Then I have a younger brother who passed away. And then I have Mary Ellen, my sister, and I have twin brothers that both coach wrestling in Chicago, younger kids. One's at Marist and one's at out the Paul Pratt.
Okay, yeah. There's Heffernans everywhere in the wrestling world, and it sounds like your brother Brian got the party started. He's a freshman. He goes to St. Ed's. Now, when this is all going on, how old are you? Are you like remembering his first years wrestling at St. Ed's? Or are you quite a bit younger? Or?
I was probably 8 or 9 when he went to St. Ed's. So
Okay.
I remember a little bit of it.
So when did you start wrestling?
Probably about that time. My brother Brian started only because he was a big kid, and the wrestling coach at our grade school needed a heavyweight, so he went to football practice and found the biggest kid and asked him to wrestle. And at that point, my dad said, "You can wrestle, but you got to take my brother," which was Jim, with him. So that's when Jim started wrestling, and I started wrestling a couple years after that.
Wow. And then, man, it's like how many years later, still at it? It's like crazy the impact. And when you think about that Cleveland scene, I mean, 35, 40 clubs, there must have been some hammers coming out of that. So who were some of the guys in the Cleveland area that you wrestled with or looked up to at that time?
Well, my grade school team, Joe McFarland was on our team. We had Joe McFarland, my brother Jim. McFarland's had a bunch of brothers.
That's your grade school team.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Of course,
a guy named Jim Mason wrestled for another grade school. He was an All-American at Michigan State. There was, and I looked up to the guys that wrestled at St. Ed's when I was old enough to start wrestling, and St. Ed's got good. That's the guys I really up to. Some like Tim Welch was the first guy. We had a guy named Tom Kuzno, who ended up being the first player drafted in the NFL. Was our heavyweight when Brian was a freshman. Now was the heavyweight.
Okay.
So I remember guys like that when I was little.
What about the great Alan Freed? He's quite a bit younger than you then, coming after you?
Alan Freed was a senior in high school when I was a senior in college.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm starting to put the pieces together here. So that's interesting because, him and Brands had a great rivalry during
Right.
that time and had some great matches.
Yeah,
And
Alan Freed actually, he took a recruiting trip to Iowa, and I was his host. And Gable had the Branch brothers and the Steiner brothers at the time, and it just, I think he wanted to recruit Freed, but he was loyal to the guys he had.
so were the Brands and Steiners already at Iowa on that trip?
The Brands were already wrestling, and the Steiners were red shirts. Yeah,
Because Freed, who's been on this podcast numerous times and has participated in a couple of documentaries we've done, he talks about, and maybe it's not even him, other people have told me, but like at a certain Fargo bracket, he might have like tech the Brands and then tech the Steiners in like the same tournament. So like these guys knew who he was potentially.
Oh yeah, we all knew. He was the first 4-time junior national champion. Everyone knew who Alan Freed was, and the one year we had the bracket hanging up in our wrestling room, he beat both Brands in the tournament. I think he was a sophomore.
You got the bracket?
Oh yeah, we got the bracket in our wrestling room. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And what folks don't realize now is that there wasn't the cadet division for a long time.
Yeah, he was the first 4-time junior national champ at the junior level.
That's
so 1 4.
incredible. And some of the other names that have come through the St. Ed's program is, I was looking at the Hall of Fame this morning, the Howard Ferguson Hall of Fame. What a list. I mean, you and your brothers, Greg Alinsky, which that's a name where I know about it, and it's only recently though, like how good he was, and like, man,
He was Penn State's first 4-time All-American. Greg Alinsky was.
There you go. I mean, unbelievable. And then guys even more, when I was in middle school, I was watching guys like Ryan Bertine, Andy Rovat, who's a friend of the show, and it's just an incredible tradition. And you're the head coach now. You've been there since '91. And we're going to talk about your wrestling career, but I want to hear about, after you graduated, were you coaching at Iowa along with Gable for those 2 years, or where did you go?
I coached at Miami of Ohio for a year in the MAC. And then I went back to Iowa, and I was part of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club a little bit. And I coached at a local high school.
Okay.
And I just decided to come back to Cleveland.
How close were you to going to Oregon with Jim and Mark Johnson? Was that ever a thought for you?
It was never a thought, really. It wasn't.
Isn't it crazy some of their guys they pulled in?
Yeah, they were good.
Like, geez Louise, Gutches, and I mean, the year after they left, they get a trophy, and that's, we're talking Oregon State here, so
right.
Freaking crazy. So you get back to Ohio area in 1991. You come on staff at St. Ed's, and you've been there ever since. At this time, is Howard Ferguson still coaching?
No, Howard Ferguson died in 1980.
Okay. And that was like a sudden heart attack kind of thing, right?
It was. Yeah, it was in October, right before the season started. So when he died, a bunch of the former wrestlers got together and had a meeting, and they gave the job to a guy named Greg Urbis, who was the freshman coach, basically. And they just kind of wanted to keep the program in stable hands. And so, and actually at that point, Dave Rowan came in and coached with Urbis too. So,
okay.
And then I went back in 91. I've been there since. And
that was a whole new wave during that era, because then the foe isn't North Allegheny, it's the guys in state, and that incredible team over at Walsh, and you were right there through the thick of all those battles.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Walsh teams in the early '90s were legendary. Matter of fact, Ben Hatta, who wrestled for us, is doing a documentary on the Ed's Walsh rivalry, which is going to be released pretty soon. We've had a lot of teams come, between Walsh and Perrysburg right now, and Wadsworth and Massillon Perry. So there's a lot of really good teams that keep coming at us, but we just kind of keep trying to be. Yeah.
And is the streak still intact? The All-American streak?
No, the streak ended 2020, I believe, and then we took another year off with COVID. But then Bryce Andonian started hopefully a new streak 2 years ago, so we got a new streak started.
That guy's a lot of fun to watch, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was a St. Ed's guy.
Oh yeah.
Wow. And like in some of the other names, folks, the Palmer brothers, I mean, those kids, if you saw them at Oh no, is my thing going still? Okay. If you saw the Palmers at a tournament back in my day at Tulsa or something, you were in for some trouble. I mean, what
Yeah,
was it like coaching those guys?
they were they're really good on top. Their dad was a little crazy.
That's what I remember.
I like him, but he's a little crazy. Um, everyone's different. The thing about his dad, he would tell you what he thought, and he held nothing back. So I kind of like that about him, really. But some of these other parents, they say crazy. But Dwayne would tell you whatever he was feeling, he would tell you.
Man, I can't even imagine some of the parents you've dealt with in your day. I mean, that's that's another level.
Yeah, that's a different part of a high school job. It's not fun sometimes.
Has that part of it changed over the years?
Not really. No, I think parents now are more kids are more special. Like they try to specialize their kids more, and they're more involved. But parents always wanted the best for their kids, so it doesn't change the whole bunch.
Yeah. Now, when you go back to your era growing up, you start wrestling. Your brother's wrestling at St. Ed's. When did you start specializing in wrestling full time?
Well, I played. Growing up, I played baseball, football. I quit playing football after my senior year in high school. Actually, my junior year in high school, because I dislocated my elbow wrestling this summer, and then I missed about half the football season. I went out for the other half and really didn't play, so I quit playing football after my junior year. So I just specialized in wrestling after that year.
Okay. And once you get in the St. Ed's program, talk to us about that, like the culture of that program, like during that 80s and late 70s time period.
It was Howard Ferguson we did the same thing every day for practice. It never changed. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, it never changed. But when I was a sophomore, I used to have to wrestle my brother Jim, Greg Olinsky, this kid named John Savetic, who was a state champ, Joe Sylvester, all these guys around my weight. I didn't start as a sophomore. The four guys at any weight I could have went were all state champs and all pretty good wrestlers too. So I would just get my brains beaten every day for 2 years basically until I was a junior. And finally try to beat somebody in practice.
So
But that was
Sylvester
good
was
for
on
him.
that team.
Yes. Yeah, he was my brother Jim's age, so the '82 class.
Okay. And so the same thing every day. What was it? Take us through the routine.
We would drill for about 45 minutes to an hour. He had this thing called the Big 66, which we would do 6 single legs, 6 high crotches, 6 double legs. And we do it on both sides of the body. We do snap. We do go behinds. Mostly it was on our feet. And then we would drill stand ups. We weren't allowed to do certain things. We couldn't on top. The only thing we could do on top was a spiral ride. So we drill a spiral ride. After we would drill for 45 minutes to an hour, we'd take a break and then we'd wrestle 6-minute partners. And then we'd run after practice. And it never changed. If we wrestled a match, he would cut it in half. That's a match day.
That's it. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Tommy Chesbro era because he was very methodical and very system oriented like that, and even at the Division I level at Oklahoma State, he was doing that kind of stuff. But at the high school level, there's certainly a lot of merits to it. I think though, that you fall into the trap of kind of lolling through it, right? If you know what's coming and you've done the same thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's when I went to college, that's what I liked about practice. Is we did something different every day. And Gable never told you what you're going to do because he always said that if you knew what you're going to do, you're going to kind of hold it back for the next thing. So,
right.
You can pace yourself when you do what's coming.
And so you have the routine, and it was the 6 high crotches, the 6 singles, 6 doubles, the snap downs. Were there any other offensive techniques you guys worked?
No, we were very, very basic at what we did, but good at it. And we were like robots. Everybody did the same thing. But it worked. There was a system that worked. It hurt me a little. A lot of guys when they went to college because we were, when we got to college, we weren't very good on the mat because we didn't wrestle very much on the mat in high school. We were really good on our feet, basic defense and basic shots. That's all we were.
And as you're going through Ohio during that era, are there any teams challenging you within the state, or is or is it mostly kind of outsiders that are coming in?
Well, in 82, 81, Midwest City, Oklahoma beat us. And they beat us pretty good. And then the next year, Ferguson was also owned his own business. He had some money. So he bought the Midwest City team back in 82, and we beat him pretty good.
He flew them out. He brought them out there on his own dime.
I think I don't think he flew them, but I think they drove a bus, but I think he paid for it, yeah. And he paid for the lodging too.
What was the atmosphere like in that duel?
Oh, that was crazy. It was a sold out gym. They put ropes around the mat, and there was people sitting right up to the ropes. And one match in particular, Greg Olinsky wrestled a guy named John LaViolette, who had pinned him the year before, and was a big stud from Oklahoma. And Olinsky ended up beating him like 8-7 or 9-8. It was a great match, and just it was a my brother Jim actually, they had a kid named Stoney Wright who won junior nationals. My brother Jim actually dropped away to wrestle him and beat him. So it was a pretty cool experience.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was, and I've had people tell me this before, whether it's Hada or Freed, what was Howard Ferguson's business? Like, how did he become wealthy?
So he was an accountant. So he was a CPA as a trade, but he started buying apartment buildings and converting them to condominiums. And he bought a lot of buildings in the area and converted them to condominiums and real estate. That's how he made his money.
That's right. Okay. And didn't he have like a gym at his house too? Like guys could come and work out all year.
Yeah. So in his basement, he had a weight room, and it was open to anybody. He would leave it open, so not just St. Ed's kids, everybody in the city of Cleveland that wanted to come knew where it was, and they would come. And there was a wet wrestling room, probably wasn't super big, but it was big enough, and they had a pretty nice weight room down there. So it was open maybe we'd keep it open 2 to 8 o'clock or 2 to 9 o'clock every day, and just people would come in and out all day and work out.
Wow, that's just amazing. That kind of culture and the energy around Cleveland at that time must have been crazy. And
yeah,
so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to know what you were about to say.
I said, some of the workouts we had in the basement in the summertime, you get kids from all over the area come in. It was pretty cool. And Ferg would bring college coaches in and different guys from colleges. And I remember, when I was a junior in high school, I remember wrestling Mike Deanna a lot down in the basement. He would come back, and it was a pretty cool experience.
And were any college coaches catching on to what this guy was doing and starting to become close to him? Like, was Gable close with Ferguson?
I don't know if he was close to him, but I think he respected what he did. I think a lot of the college coaches, our kids just started, Jim Mason started it, basically Mike Olinsky, some of the older guys. Jeff Coles was our first All-American in 1980. So we just started putting guys in college. So he was becoming known to the college coaches. Yeah.
Got it. And so 82's you guys beat the Oklahoma team. And then when does North Allegheny start coming into the picture?
North Allegheny was, I was in college. So it was Freed's junior and senior year, right around that time. So probably 80, 88, 89, somewhere in there.
Did you guys have any? They had some crazy teams, right? I mean, I just had on 2 guys from that era, Mark Angle and then Teague Moore, who went to North Allegheny. Obviously, his brother was a legend for them. So when your era, like when you were a junior and senior, were you guys battling any teams, or did you just roll through everyone?
Pretty good. North Canton Hoover was probably the second best team in Ohio, but we kind of rolled through everybody back then. When I was a senior, our team was pretty good.
And you won a state title for them as a junior or senior?
Senior. Yeah. The junior, I was state qualifier, and it was the old carry-through system. I got beat in the quarters, real close match. My guy got hurt, defaulted in the semi, so I got knocked out of the tournament.
Brutal. Yeah, Illinois was like that for a long time. How many divisions were in Ohio back then?
3.
And it's been 3 the whole time?
Yep.
Okay. And I assume St. Ed's is the biggest division, or?
Division, correct. Yes.
Okay. And so your senior year, you finally you win the state title. Talk us through that experience and what memories you have of that tournament, kind of what you were feeling going into it, what it was like to win it.
Well, I had earlier in the year, in January 24th, actually, I remember the day. I hurt my knee, and so I had my knee scoped, and so the doctor was like exploratory surgery, wasn't sure what was happening. There was some cartilage. He got cartilage removed. So I was out for a month prior to our sectional tournament, which started about February 24th, 25th. So I came back and just I was pretty confident I was going to do well, and I had pretty good run through the state series.
It's crazy you remember the date of the scoping.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I remember the day. Yeah.
And so what did they do? Did they kind of flay you open and check some stuff out, or because God knows what they were doing back then?
Yeah, see, that was kind of new too, and it was 1984, so it wasn't like it was, practice a whole lot back then. But I hurt my knee in practice, and I went to the doctor, and he's like, "Well, you got two options. One, just to sit out the rest of the year, or two, we could go in and look at it and see what happens. And I think it's this, but we'll see what happens." And so he did, and everything worked out for the best.
And at that point, just based on the time difference, Jim was already at Iowa, correct?
Jim was already at Iowa, correct.
So what are your thoughts on where you're going to go? Do you know for sure you're going to Iowa?
In the back of my mind, I always want to go to Iowa. Really, my dad used to get upset with me because I had a couple of recruiting trip planned or trip offers like Arizona State and LSU had a program back then, and these guys offered recruiting trips, and my dad was like, "You got to go just to check it out. You're never going to go get a chance to go somewhere like that for free again." So, but I didn't go. I knew I was going to go to Iowa. I visited Penn State and Iowa, the only two places I visited. But I always wanted to wrestle for Gable and wrestle at Iowa, and that's where I ended up.
And so talk to us about that transition. When you get out there, what's your first impression of the program?
Well, I hurt my knee again at junior nationals, but I tore it up pretty good. So I had a reconstructive surgery that summer, and so I couldn't wrestle my first 12 months at Iowa. So I was in a cast for probably the first 6 weeks I was there. So I did a lot of watching, lifting with Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson would pick me up at the dorm at 5:30, and I'd have to live with them, which sucked. Being a high school freshman and not being able to wrestle, but Mark Johnson would still come pick me up, which was cool, which is awesome. I could do stuff like that, but I just couldn't step on the mat. But it was interesting watching how Gable operated compared to Ferguson. They're both great in their own ways. And Gable is so much different than Ferguson, but obviously they were both successful, very successful.
Outside of the practices being structured and not structured, how were they different?
Ferguson treated everybody the same no matter what. Gable, there were some guys that Gable was really good at reading people and doing things that certain people needed to be done and not done. Like he would give some people slack and some people not slack. Ferguson, everything was black and white. You either do this or you don't. And then Gable was like, well, you can do this, but you better do that. Some guys, there was a guy, Marty Kistler, who just refused to do morning workouts, just wouldn't do them. And he would come at night and work out, and he ended up being pretty successful. Gable let it go.
There's legendary stories of, I don't know if it was Ed or Lou Bannock, but guys would go a season without seeing him at the normal practice time.
Yeah. It's guys would work out at different times. Yeah. We'd have a couple guys who would, do their own thing a little bit, but for the most part, everyone was doing what we were told.
And when you're there, you get there, must have been 84, 85. So we're still in the heyday of the work hard, play hard. Who were some of the Iowa studs, the crowd favorites at that time?
Well, when I moved in the dorm, when I was my first year, right across me was an Olympic silver medalist, Barry Davis, which probably doesn't happen too often. So Barry Davis was on the team at the time. Wayne Goldman. The 86 team, was Kevin Dresser, Marty Kistler, Lindley Kistler. Royce Elder was part of the team, and Penrith was there. Rico Ciparelli. We had some pretty good characters in the team.
And is the story about Roy sleeping in a tent in the front yard of the dorms, is that true?
Royce probably slept in a tent. He probably slept on a couch. He probably slept everywhere in a dorm. Anywhere, Royce. Any story you hear about Royce is probably true. Put it that way.
That is just, I was laughing earlier because you said Barry Davis. Like he's a guy who was known to love living in the dorms, which I don't know anyone who wants to live in the dorms.
He was a fifth-year senior Olympic silver medalist, and he was living in the dorms with a freshman. kind of crazy. But Barry Davis is he still is the most energetic guy. I mean, he just has a motor that never quits. And, it was a great example to see living as a freshman, being a freshman. I lived with my brother Jim, so we were right across the hall, and just kind of watching what he did. It was pretty cool.
And guys like Randy Lewis, was he still around training a lot at that time?
Randy Lewis was, yeah. So I got there in '84, right after he won the Olympics. So Randy was on a little, Randy was being Randy.
Yeah, that's the so I mean, oh yeah, of course. So 84 LA. So we got Bannock's won, right?
Next one, yeah.
So I mean, there's all kinds of Olympic medals floating around the program at that time.
Yeah. Eddie Bannock was still there, and then the next year he went to coach there. But I forgot Eddie Bannock was still there. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that sets up, one of the most epic, I would say, 4 dual series of all time, like the 2 in Iowa State in '86, and then the 2 in 2 in '86, '87, 2 in '87, '88, and all 4 of those duels, Iowa and Iowa State, were crazy. And I know Jim Gibbons is doing a documentary on that's going live here. And just to make it simple for folks, so '86, Iowa wins the Nationals, 5 in the finals with only 8 qualifiers, though. And
right, that's 6 in the finals, 5 champs.
6 in the finals, 5 champs.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is that the year Iowa State beat Iowa in a duel for the first time under Gibbons?
Yes, and that's what that documentary is about. It's about the '86 duel right before, it was in February. It was right before the NCAA tournament. It was in Ames, and I remember going there to watch. I was a redshirt that year, and I was behind Royce Elger and then the Kissler. So I went there to watch, and just kind of was surprised what happened, but it ended up being a good thing for the guys because we ended up wrestling really well, man. They ended up wrestling really well at nationals.
Yeah, but that duel's crazy because of, one, you have Gibbons, who's this, the youngest coach at D1 at the time, or one of the
He's
youngest.
26 years old. Oh, it's crazy.
And the Gibbons family, if you're in Western Iowa, is as popular as any name there is at that time. The wrestling brotherhood, the brothers that wrestled there were all, state champs. I'm sure all of them All-Americans, if not national champs too.
Yeah, they're a great family, and we got a place. My wife's from Iowa, so we have a place in Ankeny, Iowa, which we go to sometimes in the summer. And I'll see Jim Gibbons once in a while, and I have a lot of respect for him for what he does. I think he's great behind at the college matches, what he does now, and what he did. And, talking to him a couple of years ago, realizing he was only 27 years old when he won the NCAA title coaching is incredible.
Incredible. I mean, it really is. And if you're a Cyclone fan, you're thinking we're about to win 5 of these. And of course, that's the last time they won was in '87. And, right now they're looking really good. I love what Dresser's doing there.
Yeah.
Metcalf and all those guys. But that duel in '86, though, so you're a redshirt freshman, not in the lineup, and you go to watch. What was there something with the 118 pounder not making weight and they had to forfeit that match, or what happened at 118 there with Perry?
I think Eglin wrestled and got pinned, if I remember right.
Maybe he just sucked a bunch before the
I think he sucked a bunch of weight. And that was a problem. That's why he didn't wrestle at Big Tens. He was returning finals from the year before.
That's what I'm thinking of. Big Tens he didn't go to. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't go to Big Tens. I think he did get pinned against Iowa State, if I remember right. But he did have a problem with weight, and I think that's, if I remember, it's been a long time, but I think that's why he didn't wrestle at Big Tens, because I think he kind of just broke, didn't make weight.
Man, those stories are legendary. Of course, Barry Davis, the donuts, and luckily they found him.
Yeah,
but,
right.
And we won't go into that whole duel because that documentary, literally a deep dive on it. I can't wait I've seen some previews of it and it looks great. Can't wait for it to go live. I think it's going to be this fall. And we're going to have Jim on.
I think it'll be a really, really cool thing for wrestling fans to watch.
No question. And we're going to have Jim on to talk about it. And you talk about Ben Hodden, the St. Ed's doc. He's another friend of the show. And that's going to be truly amazing. Ben Hodden and his partner are just amazing what they're doing. But that, so that's like, you're there at such a pivotal time, right? You're there at the absolute peak, which is kind of mid 80s. And then, 86, they win it. You lose the duel to Iowa State. I don't know if that was the year Penn State also got a win at Carver, if that was the following year.
No, that was in 1988.
Okay. So things are, cracks are showing a little bit, so to speak. And then 87, Iowa State wins the first duel and then is in Carver for the second duel of the year and is about to win 3 straight duels. And one of the craziest pins at heavyweight. It was a heavyweight?
No, that was a Rico Chiapparelli pin. That was 87. 88
Okay.
was when Brooke Simpson pinned Volker. That was 88. But in
Got it.
87, they beat us in Ames. And then the last match of the year, Rico ended up pinning. We won 18-15. Every match was a regular decision except for Rico. Rico pinned the guy. And that was a crazy match.
And that's also when Royce and KJ are battling, right?
Kevin Jackson, yeah, wrestled Tim Krieger. I used to get beat up by a guy named Stuart Carter. Just for some reason would beat the hell out of me every time he wrestled me. But yeah, those were great matches.
And so when you got into the room, you were injured, you're banged up. Who were some of your workout partners? Like, who are you drilling with Jim daily, or what's that like?
Well, that's the thing in Iowa. We don't really wrestle someone every day. Drill. Like we'll go in and pick a guy and actually work out that day. So you wrestle somebody different all the time. But I will say, guys that I wrestled with, I learned a ton from. My brother Jim, obviously. Kevin Dresser, I wrestled a lot, and Kevin Dresser would it doesn't look like a big strong guy like Marty Kissel or Royce, but he could beat the hell out of you like anybody else. And I learned a ton of wrestling skills wrestling him, wrestling my brother. Then I learned also wrestling guys like Marty Kissler and Royce, a little toughness too. They would just maul you every day. So it was either a survival of the fittest there. They would just maul. And Royce was if he smelled blood, he would just kill you. So he had to survive a little bit wrestling those guys.
God, what a group of characters. And every person I've had on the show, they can point to like one moment, whether it's high school or college, that's a turning point for them that really kind of propelled them. And obviously you had an amazing career at Iowa, 2-time All-American, and a match away as a senior. What was like a turning point for you early on that said, hey, I'm going to be an All-American and potentially a national champ for this team?
Well, when I went there, my goal was to be a 4-time national champ, and I always believed in myself. I cut a lot of weight when I was a sophomore and junior. I wrestled 158, and I probably wasn't the best weight cutter. And I would always get better at the end of the year because my weight was going to control more. The rules were different back then. Now I'd probably, I wrestled 158 then. Now I'd probably have to be a 74 pounder, maybe 84.
That much.
Yeah. So I would cut a lot of weight, but so it took me a while to get my weight under control. Once I got my weight under control, I started wrestling better. But I was a big, I just believed in myself and kind of thought now looking back, it's kind of hard to say, but almost everything's relative. I don't think my career was successful because I didn't do what I wanted to do at Iowa, but most people's eyes it's pretty good, but I still think that I probably could have done better. I still think about that sometimes, honestly.
And who did you have to beat out your sophomore year to crack into the lineup?
I beat a kid named Mitch Kelly, who was, and I remember this. We used to do wrestle-offs. We used to go to different high schools in Iowa to get fan support. We'd go to wrestle-off, and I think this was in Muscatine, Iowa. It's Muscatine High School, and the gym's packed. And I beat Mitch Kelly, and I'm just happy to make the team. And I'm so happy I won the match. And Mitch is a senior, just a nice kid. And I remember I walked off the mat. I'm sitting back underneath the bleachers. And my brother Jim comes and starts bitching at me because he's like, "You got to start. If you're going to be on this team, you got to start. You got to be a guy like that worse. You got to do this. And Mitch is one of our good friends still to this day. He's like, you got to start wrestling better. You got to start scoring more points. This and this and this. I was just happy to win the match. So kind of put in perspective what's expected once you make the varsity team there.
And I can't even imagine Jim giving you the business like that. He's such a nice guy.
yeah. He is sometimes. You get him on a mat, he's not very nice, but yeah.
So that's cool that because I always remember the wrestle-offs. It was like a Saturday before a football game, and I don't even know if they do them anymore, but back then they would go to different high schools like that.
We used to do preliminary wrestle-offs in the room, like at coaches' clinics and stuff like that. But when I was in college, we used to go to different high schools and do the main wrestle-offs.
And
when I was a freshman, I'll never forget this. I got to wrestle off Roy. I drive to Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is like a 4 or 5 hour drive. I remember I drove 5 hours to get my ass kicked on wrestle off, so it wasn't very fun.
And you probably knew going into that one how that one was going to go, or did you have
No,
a?
I thought I was going to win, or hope I was going to win, but I mean, I get my ass kicked, but it was just,
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun to do actually. In retrospect, it was fun.
That's what I love about Gable though. He's such a promoter. It's like I just don't think like his ability to be a people person and read people, it's so unique because you almost don't you kind of forget about that now, right? You almost to now it's like the Iowa program is it's very black and white, right? It's this or that way, but there was a lot of gray with Gable, right? There's not a lot of gray with Tom Brands.
No, Gable was like you said, he's very good at reading people, and very good at getting the best out of people. That's what he was so good at. And people ask about Cale Sanderson and Gable, how they're similar or not. And I would love to go watch Penn State practice for a week and see what they do. But Gable was, I can't see anybody being better getting the best out of people than Gable did, just because of the way he read people and the way he pushed people's buttons, and he would try to find out about the person, what makes you go, and he would use it.
And Barry Davis would say it'd be something as simple as like a word or two. He'd walk by you drilling at practice or something, drop a couple words, and just keep on walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's God, what a legend. So when you crack into the lineup, 87, and of course that's the year where Brad Pendler wrestled Kelly in the finals, and the streak was broken.
Yep.
What was Gable like after that year?
Um, I think there were some things going in the program that we needed to fix. Guys doing things off the mat. Our culture was not great. We had some guys that didn't start that were just bad for the team. I think he knew that he had to clean that up and step up his recruiting, because my recruiting class and the recruiting class after me, I think out of the two classes, we didn't wasn't no it was the 86 recruiting class. There wasn't only any All-Americans, so I think he pick up his recruiting, and I think he maybe was resting on his laurels a little bit. In the 80, we almost won. We lost a real close match to Arizona State, and then 89 we didn't do so well. We started picking up after that.
Yeah, and that's why I hate that Joe C was forced out of Oklahoma State over that camp incident, because man, he was building something special at Oklahoma State, and it would have been fun to see Okie State and Iowa at full power, and we really never got to see that, because Gable's rebuilding, and then 91, where it should have been the showdown, Oklahoma State's already dealing with some of this investigation, and then 92, it's a crapshoot.
Joe C was an interesting character, because when I was a senior in high school, I already committed to Iowa, and I signed, and he came to Cleveland for whatever reason. I think Ferguson brought him in for something, and we worked out in Ferguson's basement. Joe C. And
What?
he goes, "You're going to Iowa?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "All right." So we were wrestling. He beat the hell out of me. He goes, "I don't see how tough you are," and he beat the hell out of me. I'll never forget that. I was kind of, it was just, I want to see what we got. And, okay, Joe, and he just kind of put it to me pretty good.
Wow.
One thing I'll never forget about the Joe C.
Think about that move now, though, right? I mean, we're seeing what we think is John Smith's successor, Coleman Scott, moving to Okie State, and it's a very thought out, planned situation, right? An Oklahoma State alum's going to take over. For them to bring in Joe C from Cal Bakersfield, a non-Oklahoman, is absolute crazy to consider.
It is, but if you look what he did at Cal State Bakersfield, and he had all those good guys there, the Questises and Joe Gonzalez and guys like that, and John Azevedo. He had some studs at Bakersfield, so he was doing a pretty good job there.
Yeah, no question. It's just like, to me, it's like he's not Oklahoma guy. Like they love it out there in Stillwater.
Box, yeah.
And Chesbro was coach of the year.
Yeah.
When he got in 84. So I know we're going all over the place here, but I love this era of wrestling. It's just a lot of fun. And when when you were finally done at Iowa, what did you want to do with your career? Did you want to coach college? Did you want to keep wrestling, or did you know you wanted to come back to St. Ed's?
I think I wanted to coach college, and I went and coached in Miami for a year. And that was, my parents lived at that time. My parents lived in Cincinnati, so it was pretty close to Miami, Ohio. So I stayed at home and coached there, and I liked it there a lot, but just I wasn't making any money and I needed to get a real job because I was a part-time coach there. So I came back to Iowa and I got a job. Actually, I got a job at the sheriff's department in Iowa City, high school there, and wrestling with the Hawkeye Club. And that's when I decided to go back to Cleveland, move on with my life.
And before we go back to St. Ed's, I don't know how I could forget this. I almost forgot. Actually, it's just totally ironic, Coach. But later today, I'm having Rob Cole on at noon, and at UNC. And yeah, talk to us about that Thursday night match with you and Coach Cole there in '87.
Yeah, he beat me up pretty good in the duel, and but I remember walking off the match saying, I could beat this guy, and it was a crazy match. And it's a match we needed at the time. I remember because Greg Randall had just lost, who was a returning finalist, and he tore his hamstring pretty bad. And so, this was the '87 tournament, which was going to come down to Iowa State.
And this is Thursday night or what? What's set the stage for us?
Thursday night, yeah. This is Thursday night, and I remember Gable telling me before the match, he goes, "We need a hero," and he said that because you can beat this guy, we need a hero, and that's when I wrestled, and I wrestled pretty good. And, Cole came back later and beat me in the tournament. The match to go for third and fourth, he beat me, I think 6-3 or something like that, or 5-2, something like that. But
wow,
the match Thursday night was crazy.
How'd it go? I've never seen it.
I put him on his back twice right away. I was up big, like 9-0. He started coming back, and I think it was like 14-8 or something by the time. And then at the end, I got in again, and I put him on his back and pinned him at the end. It was back and forth.
Wow. I didn't know that it had, you see the pin in the bracket and you're thinking, okay, what happened? Was it one move? But you're back and forth. And the fact that you put him on his back early, that's the number one seed. The crowd's probably getting into it, right? They're noticing something's going on here.
I had him on his back twice. I think I was up maybe like 10-2. And
wow.
And he was good, but it just worked out for me that time.
And it's crazy because your old teammate Joe Silvestro was at UNC at the time, right?
Oh, yeah. I think he's one of Cole's best friends.
Yeah, and he's a coach in Illinois now, as I'm sure you know, Marmion, one of the powers. But so I almost got chills when you said that though. Gable said we need a hero to you before that. Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And you come off the mat. I'm almost scared to even ask this question. How much did you have to pull that night?
I was about 11 over. But I was a pretty good sweater. That was a good hour and 15 minutes for me. But back then, you could walk off the mat and literally put your plastics on right there. I mean, I walked out the mat, I'm sweating like crazy. Take my singlet up, put my plastics on, and get going. So it's it's an hour and a half workout.
Was it a weigh-in that night or the next morning?
Weigh in that night. We used to weigh in the night before. Yeah.
So how long did you have to cut the 11? Would you say?
A couple hours.
Yeah, that's a different time.
11 pounds was probably, like I said, an hour and a half, maybe, if I worked hard.
You just running or like bike or what?
Like run, jump rope. I had a little routine I used to do. Jump rope, bike, mostly jump rope and bike. A little bit of running, but you had time to recover, but you still wanted to save yourself because you had matches tomorrow, so I didn't want to ruin my legs very much by running all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I could sweat.
That's yeah. I mean, I know, of course, cutting still happens. I'm sure it happens on a big scale, but nowhere near what it was back then. I mean, but you're in the thick of it. Coaching one of the best teams. Do you think it's gotten better?
I do. I think what I tell our kids all the time now is we're not a weight cutting team, we're a wrestling team. So practice shouldn't be about weight cutting. Practice should be about getting better wrestling. If you're worried about your weight, maybe you're going the wrong weight. So, and it's easier said than done because some kids have to make our team, especially. Some kids maybe have to cut weight a little bit or go away they don't want to go. But I think the main focus should be getting better in practice, not cutting weight in practice.
It's funny you say that. Bo Nickel was just on a super popular podcast called the Jocko Podcast, listened to by millions. And they go deep into his wrestling career and talk about the weight cutting. And he wasn't a big weight cutter at all at Penn State. And kind of goes hand in hand to what you're saying. Like he was just focused on getting better every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes it, wrestling's a hard sport as it is when you throw cutting weight and you're not drinking or eating. It's a miserable sport, so try to do what you can.
Miserable. Now, let's talk a little bit about program building and being a head coach. I know that you've been at that program, like I said, since 91. Talk about how, when you think about a program being that consistent for so long, I immediately think about the youth club. So how involved are you in the youth club, and what's the feeder programs like the St. Ed's?
Right now we have our big feeder is called Ferguson ran West Shore Y. Now we call our youth club the West Shore Club. It's not a Y, but it's a club. It's run by a guy named Gable who runs Defense. So, and we have a couple of former wrestlers that actually coach it. That's where the majority of our kids come from, and that's right now wrestling about 4 or 5 days a week. They travel all around, and we're probably anywhere between 75 to 100 kids in the club. So that's where we get most of our kids from. Younger was involved a lot in it, especially when my kid was coming through. Now as I get older, I'm not involved as much probably as I should be, but it's getting tougher for me to, I can't wrestle and be on the mat as much as my knee and everything else, but I'm still at beginning of practice. They come in and our practice ends at 5:15. They're in the room by 6. So I'll still stick around and say hi to the kids and stuff like that. But we do have a couple like Charlie Agazzino and Guy Seiko. And then we got some other guys in there that do pretty good. This year, Devin Schroeder was in the room for a while too. So they do a pretty good job. They do a really good job.
It's cool that it's called the West Shore Club in honor of the original YMCA club. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, if there's some young coaches listening, and I know there are, some guys in their 20s that are just getting started in coaching and they're excited about it, what are some you think are some of like the key things that maybe are often overlooked or just key values that everyone in the St. Ed's program follows when it comes to coaching and mentoring these young guys?
For me, a couple things. One, wrestling wise, I talked about Ferguson. We don't show a whole lot of wrestling. We show basic stuff: singles, high crotches, doubles, attack both sides of the body, good basic defense. We're a little bit more diversified on our feet, on the mat. We got kids that do legs, that do other things, and we work a lot of other things on the bottom side just to stand up too. But it's basic wrestling. As far as kids, I never forget what it's like to be a 15, 16-year-old kid, and what my expectations were and what they are as a coach. Maybe are different as a kid. Kids are 16, 17, 15 years old, whatever they are. They got some things that, they got homework, they got girls, they got other things. So you got to realize, again, I learned this kind of from Gable, is each kid's different, kind of find out what you can do to help a kid. And I try to tell the kids there's a 2-hour time frame where I want you guys' attention on wrestling only. From 3:15 to 5:15, we go to practice. And other than that, be a kid. Do the right thing. I don't have to be a kid. Don't have fun with the high school experience. You only have it once, but you have to put your time in. Be serious about things here too.
And so you have a system that a couple of things I'm hearing. One, a system that's taught and repeated, and it's kind of understood by everyone. And whatever it is, everyone knows the core skills, but the way you guys teach it, I'm sure, is a little bit different. But then also, I like the theme of like not taking ourselves too seriously. And man, wrestlers have a real problem with that. And even in my personal life, in my business life, I think that once in a while I have to remind myself just to kind of like relax a little bit. And that's cool that you're kind of instilling that right away. Not to take yourself too seriously.
I talk to the kids before practice every day, and half the time it's just busting chops, picking a kid out and saying, if his hair looks goofy that day, or we'll just not, I make sure to do it to the right kid that can take it, and we have a thing we call kids, I used the term Jack in the Box once, and the kids all ran with it. So we call it, if you're a Jack in the Box, you're being, like a knucklehead kid. So they all they run with that. So literally the first 5-10 minutes of practice, I'll get the kids kind of loosen up like that, and we'll just kind of sit around, and something happens funny on TV or anything, we'll talk about it and get going. It's not, I don't want the kids coming in dreading practice and dreading, my God, coach's gonna yell at us today. There's a time to get serious and get on the kids, and there's a time to, let the kids be kids, have fun with it.
I noticed you guys sent 11 studs out to Fargo this year. What does the freestyle program look like? Or do you have like academies? Like, is there a big academy in Cleveland that's like private and paid? It's really dominating, or is it more local?
No, there's no one that dominates. There's a lot of different clubs. Michael Zicki has a club, which is close to ours, we basically do our own stuff.
Yeah.
We'll have open mats after school, and we'll work freestyle. Some of our kids go to different clubs, but most of our kids just work out right at St. Ed's. We have the facilities. I tell the kids, we here 3:15. We can work out and you get it done with. You don't have to go home and then drive somewhere else, and you go home and do your homework and do what needs to be done with school. So we do have some kids go to different places all over the city.
Yeah, no, you think about the hotbed of Cleveland and just Ohio in general, and in Chicago, for example, when I was growing up, there's one or two big academies, but they were also, they were expensive, but you had to be able to get there. And so interesting to see that, not interesting, but I guess it's cool that you guys just have that facility, and that's part of the St. Ed's experiences. You can come year round and get good instruction. Yeah,
and the best thing we have are other kids to work out with, so they can wrestle with their teammates every day, and that's the best thing. It's kind of made us good is who they get to work out with every day. They're not going to get better partners necessarily if they go somewhere else.
Right. Well, and you look at, you mentioned earlier Penn State, and one thing we hear a lot about the Penn State program is this concept of spar wrestling, play wrestling. Do you guys get into that at all, or what's your take on when they talk about that?
Yeah, we started doing that a little bit. I try to evolve as a coach. It's not, I would say 30 years ago it was all, Gable, pound the guys, but it's not like that. And I try to keep the guys as fresh as we can. So we that's a hard skill to teach too, by the way. That's sparring, play wrestling. Some people think it is what, but it's really kind of hard to teach for young kids to get. But we do. I don't say we do a lot of it, but we do it. Yes, I think it's a good way to learn too. By the way, I think drilling's good, but in my opinion, you learn way more wrestling live and getting positions live, and I think play wrestling helps with that too.
It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of, like, the more I hear people talk about it, like, I had a brother 13 months younger, and, he was a big wrestler, and in our living room, we would just be scrambling around, right? Like passing ankles, throwing legs in. And like, you think about it, like, that's probably more along the lines of what they're doing. And you just kind of like, getting into positions and figuring it out from there.
Absolutely. I tell our kids, you're never going to hit a perfect single leg or a perfect high crotch in a match, but you can learn position by doing stuff like, wrestling hard. If you wrestle hard in practice, the object is not to get scored on. The object is to score as many points as you can. Because if your object is not to get scored on, you're not going to do anything.
Right.
So you have to do something to learn. You have to get taken down to learn how to get taken down and get out. There's a skill to that too.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, it's been awesome to have you on. I want to wind down with 3 questions here. One of the questions is, wrestling, it seems to be a brotherly sport, right? A lot of brothers wrestle. Obviously, your older brother, amazing head coach at Illinois, Hall of Fame career. What was it like watching him win an NCAA title for the Hawks? Where were you? Talk us through that.
Man, he was like he was my hero growing up, because he was really, I don't think people realize how good he really was. He took 4th as a true freshman behind Nate Carr and Kenny Monday. Then he redshirted. Then was in the finals 3 years. And you can see the final match when he was a senior. He lost to Tim Krieger, which a match that never should have been. Krieger should have won, but you can watch it on YouTube. But I don't know if people realize how good he really was. And I remember when he won the tournament in '86, he beat Arizona State in the finals by beating him earlier in the year in the Minnesota Quad, and he just beat the hell out of the guy in the finals. There was no one that was going to come close to him that weekend. He just was on and looked so good. And I remember, as a brother of the family, we were so proud of him, what he did, and we knew it. He was a stud since he first stepped on the mat in St. Richard's, and we kind of knew it was coming. So it was awesome to see.
So he lost to the Minnesota or the Arizona State guy in the dual, or
yeah, we wrestled him. We wrestled him the first weekend in the Minnesota Quad, and this kid Cohen beat him. And but honestly, I wasn't really too worried in the finals. I knew that he was on that tournament. He looked really good that whole weekend.
In '86 was at Carver, right?
Yeah, it was a carving.
Oof, Lordy, that's what a weekend. And you talk about
Yeah.
his true freshman year. Nate Carden came Monday. Come on here.
So he lost to Nate Carr in the semis. Third time he lost to Nate Carr that year. And then he came back and he actually the guy who took third is a guy named Roger Fussell, who was a four-time All-American, who Jim beat in the duel. And then he forfeited because he had a hip pointer for third and fourth. He made it the third and fourth match, and Gable just said, you've had enough, because he was limping around pretty good. So he didn't get a chance to wrestle third and fourth. But yeah,
was that an Oklahoma guy, Fizzell?
Oklahoma, Roger Fussell.
Yeah. That's
Jim actually beat him. It was the first match ever at Carver Hawkeye. First event ever at Carver, sporting event. He wrestled Oklahoma. Jim beat Roger Fussell at that match, the true freshman.
Man. Now, were you going out there to watch those duels, or were you just kind of hearing about it from phone, since you were still in high school?
Yeah, we had 9 kids, and, we weren't driving out there every weekend. I was wrestling, my parents were kids, and there was no, obviously, computer. We couldn't watch it on the computer, so we had to wait around till after the match and wait till he called us to tell us how he did.
That's crazy. Wow. Now, you mentioned, all the people who influenced you at Iowa. One guy who we don't hear much about anymore, but I know was crucial for those teams, Coach Zaleski. What kind of relationship did you have with Coach Zaleski during that era?
Well, there was Lenny and Jimmy both there. Jimmy was only there a couple of years. You talk about Jimmy?
Yeah.
So Jimmy was I wrestled Jimmy a lot when he was getting ready for the world teams, like around 86, around that era. Used to work out with him a lot. And then he went to Minnesota and was coaching with Jay Robinson for a couple of years. So he was gone my last 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Lenny was there though. Lenny was pretty good. Lenny was really good as far as technique, and Lenny's a really good guy, really funny guy.
Well, every program, it seems like, right? Like the head guy maybe isn't like the technique guru, but everything you hear about that era is that Zaleski was the technique guy, and before that it was J Rob, right? But
yeah. When I was there, Gable's a technician, obviously. Lenny Zaleski was pretty good at it too, though.
Yeah.
Really good. Barry Davis. And honestly, if I needed technique, I went to my brother Jim.
Yeah, I mean, who better, right?
He was as good as there was, honestly.
Wow.
At technique, especially.
Well, Coach, last question for you. You named this podcast "Wrestling Changed My Life." For you, like if you come across a parent, right, and they're at the first day of St. Ed's in August, and they're thinking, "Hey, I might send my kid out for wrestling," why would you say you would encourage a parent to send their kid out for wrestling?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, the brotherhood our kids have, they do everything off the mat. Not everything, but our kids are friends on and off the mat. They hang around together, they do different things. It's a brotherhood. It teaches you discipline, hard work. When you have to go out there, and the hardest thing when I watch little kids, and I tell parents, dads especially, when their kids in second grade, they're all pissed off. I said, you know what? If the second grader went out there by himself with just him and another guy and wrestled, that takes a lot to do that. So it takes a lot to go out there and do it by yourself. You're not blaming anybody else. It's what you're learning. And secondly is we got guys all over the Ivy Leagues now. We got 7 guys in the Ivy Leagues now in different places. It's gonna open doors for you. We got a guy at Princeton who's a really good guy, really good wrestler, smart kid, obviously, but he might not have gotten to Princeton but for wrestling. So it's gonna open doors for you, and use it. Ferguson used to say, use the sport, don't let the sport use you. So we kind of live by that.
That's a ton of guys in the Ivies. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We have a couple guys at Stanford. We've got guys all over the place. So it's pretty cool. And that's what I'm most proud of about the program, is where our kids are successful after college. We're in college, we had that streak for a long time, but even after college, they're going on being productive citizens and doing big things in the world. So that's what I'm really most proud of.
You don't have an inside light on the next coach at Stanford, do you, Coach?
I don't. I do not. It'd be interesting. I hope they keep the program, but
yeah. No, it's an interesting time right now. I'm excited about Cole going back to UNC. I love that Tony Ramos is still there, Illinois guy, but yeah. I'm worried about Oregon State. They're not in a big conference as of next year, and I think that's going to kill their budget. But I love what they've been doing. Pendleton's phenomenal.
We talked about the Oklahoma State job, but I wouldn't be shocked if he got the Oklahoma State job when it
So
opens up. He's doing a
me,
great job out there.
me either. I couldn't agree more. But like, you assume when someone leaves as a head coach to become an assistant that it's like a job in waiting, but you never know, right? It's a very
You never
bizarre
know.
thing.
You never. It's a bizarre thing, is right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know the ins and outs, but
Name
like,
another major
Pendleton's doing
program.
a good job out there.
Oh, phenomenal job. Pendleton's great. I mean, the Oklahoma State coaching tree is kind of like Gable's in the I mean, of course, Gable's is still out there, but in the 90s. But I mean, name another. Like, how weird would it be for a college football coach at UNC to resign, take an assistant job at his alma mater?
Right.
It's a very unique situation that we found ourselves in.
It's crazy.
Cole at UNC, though, is exciting. Like, that is very exciting for me.
Yeah, he's going to do a good job. He really
I mean,
is. It's a
like,
great place, and I've never been there, but everything I hear, it's a beautiful place and probably a really nice place to recruit. You got Pennsylvania and Ohio's kind of close, and New Jersey, and it's pretty good recruiting area too.
good public school or good public school. So yeah, it's it's an exciting time. Well, Coach, I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this season, and it's been an honor to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. This episode was brought to you by our friends at CauseMatch. They're an online peer-to-peer crowdfunding platform. And if you're looking to supplement your fundraising efforts this wrestling season, go to causematch.com/wrestling. That's causematch.com/wrestling. We'll see you next time on a new episode of Wrestling Changed My Life.